Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood, by Trevor Noah. Introduction. Imagine you're 9 years old. It's Sunday, and you're in the car with your mother and your baby brother, coming home from church. But the car isn't yours. The driver is a stranger, a minibus driver, and he's angry. He's been yelling at your mother, calling her a whore, a slut, a disgrace to her tribe. He's speeding through the empty city streets, not stopping at intersections, and he's just promised her that tonight, she's going to learn her lesson. You're exhausted from a long day. You start to drift off to sleep. And then, you feel your mother's hand on you. She leans in close and whispers, "Trevor," when he slows down at the next corner, "I'm going to open the door. And we're going to jump." You don't quite hear her. You're half asleep. The next thing you know, the car door slides open, and you are flying through the air, thrown from a moving vehicle by your own mother. You hit the pavement? Hard. Pain shoots through your body. You tumble and roll, and as you come to a stop, dazed and bleeding, you hear your mother scream one word: "Run." This isn't a scene from a Hollywood movie. This was a very real Sunday night for a young Trevor Noah. Today, you probably know Trevor Noah as the charming, whip-smart host of The Daily Show. He's a global comedy superstar who seems to navigate the world with an effortless grace. But the story of how he got there is one of the most remarkable tales you'll ever hear. His memoir, Born a Crime, has sold millions of copies and has been hailed as a modern classic, not just because it's funny, but because it's a profound story about a boy trying to find his way in a world that was never designed for him. And at the heart of it all is his mother, Patricia, a woman of unshakable faith and even more unshakable will, who armed her son with love, humor, and a mind that could not be imprisoned. In the next hour, we're going to step into the world that shaped Trevor Noah. This isn't just a book summary, it's a journey. By the end of our time together, you'll understand the secret to navigating a world that tries to put you in a box. You'll discover how the most profound love can be forged in the most difficult circumstances, and you will see how one boy, born a crime, used his mind as his ultimate superpower to write his own destiny. Let's begin. Book summary. To understand Trevor Noah, you have to understand the world he was born into. Apartheid, South Africa. Now, apartheid wasn't just simple racism. It was, as Trevor calls it, perfect racism. It was a system engineered over centuries, a meticulously designed police state with thousands of laws created for one purpose: to keep black people under total control. The system's architects were brilliant in their cruelty. They understood that you can't control a majority that outnumbers you 5-1 unless you convince them to turn on each other. So they took the black population and sliced it into different tribes: Zulu, Xhosa, Sotho, and many others. They stoked old rivalries, gave different groups different, very minor, privileges, and made them hate one another, all so the white minority could rule them all. The cornerstone of this entire system was separation. White, black, colored, Indian, everyone was classified and forced to live apart. And the most unforgivable sin, the one that threatened the very logic of this insane system, was mixing. Under the Immorality Act of 1927, it was a crime for a European and a native to have carnal intercourse. A crime punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And this is where our story truly begins. Because Trevor's parents, a black Xhosa woman named Patricia and a white Swiss/German man named Robert, committed that crime. And their proof, the evidence of their criminality, was their child. Trevor Noah was, quite literally, born a crime. His very existence was a paradox. In America at the time, the one-drop rule meant that any black ancestry made you black. But South Africa created a whole separate category: colored. But to be colored, you were supposed to have 2 colored parents. Trevor had one black parent and one white one, which was illegal. His birth was a logistical nightmare for a system obsessed with boxes. When he was born, the doctors, seeing his light skin, asked his mother who the father was. She lied and said he was from Swaziland, a neighboring country, just to give them an official sounding story they could write down on the birth certificate. Officially, his father was never on his birth certificate. He didn't exist. Growing up, Trevor's life was a series of elaborate maneuvers to hide his existence. His father, Robert, a quiet, reserved, and fiercely anti-racist man, could never be seen with him in public. If they went to the park, Robert would have to walk on the other side of the street. Trevor remembers one time when he was a toddler, he saw his dad across the park and yelled, "Daddy!" People started looking, and his father, panicking, just ran away. Trevor, thinking it was a game, chased after him, not understanding the danger. He couldn't walk with his mother, either. A black woman with a light-skinned child raised too many questions. So, his mother, Patricia, a genius at finding loopholes, devised a plan. She would hire a colored woman from their apartment building to walk with them. The colored woman would hold Trevor's hand, pretending to be his mother, while his real mother, Patricia, walked a few steps behind, pretending to be the maid. In his family photos, you can see this other woman who looks like him, and in the background, there's a black woman who looks like she's photobombing the picture. That woman is his mother. When she couldn't find a colored woman to help, she would risk walking with him herself. But if the police appeared, she would have to do the unthinkable. She would drop his hand and let him go, pretending he wasn't her child, as if he were a bag of weed she was ditching. Think about that for a moment. A mother having to pretend her own son is a stranger to protect them both. This was their life. A constant state of hiding. But the person at the center of this impossible world, the architect of Trevor's survival, was his mother, Patricia Nombasalo Noah. And to know Trevor, you must first know her. Patricia was a force of nature. Born unwanted, the second girl in a culture that valued sons, she was sent away by her parents at age 9 to live with relatives in the Xhosa homeland, the Transkei. She spent her childhood working like an ox, often hungry, sometimes literally eating dirt mixed with water just to feel full. She grew up with nothing, belonging to no one. And she decided, with a will of iron, that her son's life would be the opposite of hers. She told him, "I chose to have you because I wanted something to love and something that would love me unconditionally in return." Patricia was a rebel in a society that demanded conformity. At a time when black women were expected to be maids or factory workers, she took a secretarial course, learned to type, and found a white-collar job, an act as defiant as learning to fly. She illegally lived in a white neighborhood in Johannesburg, hiding from the police, learning to survive from prostitutes who taught her how to dress as a maid to move around the city without being questioned. It was there that she met Robert, the quiet Swiss man who lived down the hall. Their relationship was born in this secret, liberal world of underground parties where black and white people defied the government just by being together. She didn't want a husband to run her life, she just wanted a child. She famously asked Robert not to have a child with her, but to help her have a child. "You will have no obligations," she promised him. "Just make this child for me." This fearlessness defined everything she did. For her, the rules of apartheid were not walls, they were suggestions. She taught Trevor to see the world the same way. Her one goal, he says, was to free his mind. While other children were being crippled by the government's Bantu education system, which taught them only how to be laborers, not how to think, Patricia was feeding Trevor's mind. She bought him books, boxes of them, anything she could get her hands on. She bought an old, outdated set of encyclopedias that he would pore over for hours. She taught him to read from the Bible, and she didn't just have him read it, she made him analyze it, question it, and apply it to his life. My mom did what school didn't, Trevor reflects. She taught me how to think. She showed him a world that black children were never meant to see. They would drive their beat-up Volkswagen into fancy white neighborhoods, and she'd hoist him onto her shoulders so he could peek over the high walls and describe the mansions, the swimming pools, the tennis courts. She took him to drive-in movies, to ice skating rinks, places that were considered Isinto Zebulon, the things of white people. Her neighbors and relatives would question her. Why show him the world when he's never going to leave the ghetto? They'd ask. And her answer was the core of her philosophy. Because, she would say, even if he never leaves the ghetto, he will know that the ghetto is not the world. If that is all I accomplish, I've done enough. She gave him the belief that the world was his oyster, that his ideas mattered, a mindset she raised him with as if he were a white kid. She knew that you can only dream of what you can imagine, and she was determined to give her son the biggest imagination possible. But perhaps the most powerful tool she gave him was language. In a country deliberately fractured by language to keep people divided, Patricia made sure English was Trevor's first language, the language of money and opportunity. But she also taught him Xhosa, her mother tongue, as well as Zulu, Afrikaans, German. She was a linguistic chameleon, and she passed this skill on to him. For Trevor, this became his ultimate superpower. He learned that language, even more than skin color, defines who you are to people. He was an anomaly everywhere. In the black township of Soweto, where he spent much of his time with his grandmother, the kids would yell, "Indida Yamlung, the white man?" and either run away from him or run up to touch him to see if he was real. His own grandmother was afraid to hit him when he misbehaved. After he accidentally perforated his cousin's eardrum with a match, his gran beat his cousins, but not him. "I don't know how to hit a white child," she told his mother. "When you hit him, he turns blue and green and yellow and red. I'm scared I'm going to break him." He was a ghost, belonging to no world. He couldn't play outside in Soweto because his grandmother was terrified the police would see him, a white-looking child in a black area, and take him away to an orphanage. He existed in a racial no-man's land. But language was his passport. He tells an incredible story from when he was a young man, walking down the street. A group of Zulu guys started following him, and he could hear them planning to mug him. "Let's get this white guy," they said. He couldn't outrun them. His heart pounded. What could he do? In a moment of pure instinct, he spun around and spoke to them in fluent Zulu. "Yo, guys," he said, "why don't we just mug someone together? I'm ready. Let's do it." The men stopped dead in their tracks, completely shocked. Then they burst out laughing. "Oh, sorry, dude," one of them said. "We thought you were something else. We were trying to steal from white people. Have a good day, man." In that moment, he learned a lesson that would define his life. They were ready to do him violent harm, until they felt they were part of the same tribe. "Maybe I didn't look like you," he realized, "but if I spoke like you, I was you." He became a chameleon. His color didn't change, but he could change people's perception of his color. This skill was put to the test when he left the sheltered, integrated bubble of his private Catholic school and entered a government school called H.A. Jack. On his first day, during recess, he walked out onto the playground and saw his country for the first time. It was an ocean of black kids, all of whom had been invisible in his Smart Attract classes, which were almost entirely white. The white kids went one way, the black kids went another, and Trevor was left standing alone in the middle. He didn't belong to either group. But his ability to speak their languages endeared him to the black kids. "How come you speak our languages?" they asked. "Because I'm black," he told them. They were confused. "No, you're not. Have you not seen yourself?" But they embraced him anyway. That day, Trevor made a choice. He went to the school counselor and asked to be moved from the smart white classes to the slower black classes. "I decided I'd rather be held back with people I liked," he says, "than move ahead with people I didn't know." When life forced him to pick a side, he chose black. But even within that choice, life was never simple. He moved to a colored neighborhood called Eden Park, thinking he would finally fit in with people who looked like him. But he was wrong. To them, he was an outsider trying to be black, and they resented him for it. It was here he learned that it's easier to be an outsider as an outsider than an outsider on the inside. He was bullied, ostracized, and pelted with mulberries by kids calling him a bushman. This feeling of being an outsider, of belonging nowhere and everywhere at once, became the engine of his early entrepreneurial career. At his large, diverse high school, Sandringham, he once again found himself floating between cliques: the black township kids, the wealthy white kids, the Indian kids, the colored kids. He wasn't a natural fit for any of them. So he created a role for himself. He became the tuck shop guy. Every day, after school assembly, there was a mad dash to the tuck shop to buy lunch. The line was always huge. Trevor, being the fastest runner in school, would sprint and always get there first. Soon, kids started paying him to buy their food for them, so they wouldn't have to wait in line. Time is money, he realized. He built a small business, taking orders, making deliveries, and earning enough to buy his own lunch and have pocket money. He was like a food dealer. He wasn't part of any circle, but he was always welcome because he had something to offer. This hustle evolved. A friend gave him a CD writer, a mythical piece of technology at the time, and he launched a massive pirated CD business. He made mix CDs, party CDs, and downloaded the latest American hip-hop that everyone was desperate for. He became a mogul. For the first time in his life, he had money, and with money came freedom. The freedom to go to McDonald's, which to him, tasted like America. He started DJing parties in the townships, most notably in the notorious neighborhood of Alexandra, nicknamed Gomorrah. He put together a dance crew to promote his new music, and the star dancer was a phenomenal performer named Hitler. Yes, Hitler. Trevor explains that in South Africa, many black families, cut off from world history and required to take European names, would sometimes pick names of powerful figures they heard about on the news, without understanding the context. To them, Hitler was just a name for someone strong. This cultural blind spot led to one of the most painfully hilarious moments in the book. Trevor's crew was booked to perform at a cultural day at a Jewish school. At the height of their performance, in front of hundreds of kids in yarmulkes, Trevor got on the mic and yelled, "Give it up and make some noise for Hitler." His crew started chanting, "Go Hitler, go Hitler," while making a hand gesture that, in the context of hip-hop, meant one thing, but in this context, looked a lot like a Nazi salute. The entire room froze in horror. A teacher yanked the plug on his sound system, and a furious argument ensued, with neither side having any clue what the other was so angry about. It was a perfect storm of cultural misunderstanding. These years in the hood, hustling on the corner, were a masterclass in street economics, but they were also a trap. The hood has a gravitational pull, Trevor reflects. It never leaves you behind, but it also never lets you leave. He was in a state of suspended animation, making just enough to get by, but not enough to get ahead. It was a comfortable life, but comfort can be dangerous. While Trevor was navigating the complexities of the outside world, his world at home was growing darker. The charming mechanic his mother had married, Abel, was revealing a different side. His name, Nazavini, in his native Sangha, meant "be afraid." And they were. Abel was a traditionalist from a deeply patriarchal culture. He wanted a submissive wife, but he had married Patricia, the most independent woman imaginable. He drank heavily, and with the alcohol came a terrifying, explosive rage. The first time he hit her was after he came home blind drunk and nearly burned the house down. When she confronted him, he smacked her across the face with the force of a thunderclap. 9-year-old Trevor watched his mother collapse. They ran to the police station to file a charge, but the police, men themselves, were dismissive. "This is a family thing," they said. "Go home and talk to your husband." They refused to help. This became the pattern. Sporadic, escalating violence, followed by heartfelt apologies and periods of calm that made you believe it might not happen again. Trevor lived in a constant state of fear, always plotting his escape, never letting Abel get between him and a door. He hated Abel, but he blamed his mother. "Why don't you just leave?" he would scream at her. He was a boy with a boy's understanding of the world, unable to see the invisible cage she was in, a society where a single woman with children was a pariah, where the police offered no protection. One day, she finally answered him, not with anger, but with a quiet, terrifying calm. "Because if I leave," she said, "he'll kill us." Eventually, she did leave. After years of abuse, after he beat her with a bicycle, she finally broke free, bought a new house, and even remarried. For a while, it seemed like the story was over. And then came that Sunday morning. The phone call from his brother Andrew, his voice unnervingly calm. "Mom's been shot." They had been coming home from church when Abel was waiting for them. "You've stolen my life," he said. "Now I'm going to kill all of you." He raised his gun. My mother jumped in front of everyone and took the first bullet in her buttock. She fell, screamed "Run," and as she struggled to get up, Abel stood over her, pointed the gun at her head, and pulled the trigger. Click! The gun misfired. He pulled it again. Click! And again. And again. 4 times, the gun jammed, spitting out live bullets onto the ground around her. In that moment of confusion, she scrambled into her car. As she turned the ignition, Abel fired one last time from behind the car. The bullet went through the back of her head, missed her brain and spinal cord by a hair's breadth, shattered her cheekbone, and exited through her left nostril. It was, as her doctor later called it, a miracle. When Trevor arrived at the hospital, he found his mother lying on a gurney, soaked in blood, but impossibly calm. The next day, as he sat by her bedside, weeping uncontrollably, she woke up. "My child," she whispered, "you must look on the bright side." "What bright side?" he cried. "Mom, you were shot in the face. There is no bright side." She broke out in a huge smile. "Of course there is," she said. "Now you're officially the best-looking person in the family." And in that moment, in that hospital room, covered in bandages and stitches, she did what she had always done. She laughed through the pain. And he laughed with her. She had told him that she chose him because she wanted something to love and something that would love her back. She had poured everything she was, everything she had, into him. She had shown him a world that was bigger than the ghetto, armed him with a mind that was freer than any law, and loved him with a fierceness that could stare down the barrel of a gun. She had been his teammate, his protector, his first fan. And in the end, when the hospital bill came and she had no insurance, she turned to him and smiled. "God didn't pay the bill," she said. "But He blessed me with a son who did." She had given him the world. And in that moment, he had the chance to give a piece of it back. Commentary. When you finish a book like Born a Crime, it stays with you. It's one of those rare stories that manages to be both hilarious and heartbreaking, often in the same sentence. On the surface, it's a memoir about growing up during one of the most oppressive regimes in modern history. But underneath, it's a story about something far more universal: the search for identity and the profound, life-shaping power of a mother's love. What I find so powerful about Trevor's story is the idea of resilience. We often think of resilience as toughness, the ability to endure hardship without breaking. But what Trevor Noah learned from his mother is that resilience is also about perspective. Patricia Noah's superpower was her ability to find the lesson, and even the humor, in the most horrific situations. When her son comes home, terrified and covered in berry juice after being bullied, she laughs and says, "Now you really are half black and half white." When she's lying in a hospital bed with a bullet hole in her head, she jokes that now he's the best-looking one in the family. This isn't about denying pain. It's about refusing to be defined by it. She taught him that your past can inform you, but it doesn't have to imprison you. "Let the pain sharpen you," she would say, "but don't hold on to it. Don't be bitter." That's a lesson for anyone, no matter where you come from. Life will be full of pain. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you let it make you a victim, or will you use it to become stronger? The other major takeaway is the idea of the chameleon. Trevor survived because he learned to adapt. He learned to speak multiple languages, to move between different social groups, to be whatever he needed to be in a given moment to connect with people. In a world obsessed with labels and boxes, he became a master of defying them. And it reminds us that our identity is not a fixed thing that's assigned to us. It's something we create. We can choose which parts of ourselves to share, which tribes to join, and how we define ourselves, regardless of how the world sees us. So, how can we apply these lessons to our own lives? First, learn someone else's language. This doesn't have to be literal. It means making a genuine effort to understand someone else's world. Ask questions. Listen more than you speak. When you show someone that you see them as a human being with a culture and identity that exists beyond your own, you build a bridge. As Mandela said, and as Trevor learned in that jail cell, when you speak to a man in his language, it goes to his heart. Second, learn to mock the system. When Patricia was faced with the absurd tradition of women bowing to men, she didn't fight it. She overdid it, groveling in the dirt until everyone was uncomfortable. She revealed the absurdity of the rule by following it to its most ridiculous conclusion. In your own life, when you face a rule or a system that doesn't make sense, sometimes the most powerful act of defiance isn't to fight it head-on, but to expose its foolishness with humor and intelligence. And finally, look on the bright side. This might sound cliché, but in Patricia's world, it was a survival strategy. It's not about ignoring reality, it's about choosing your focus. You can focus on the fact that you've been shot, or you can focus on the fact that you've survived. You can focus on the pain, or you can find the reason to laugh through it. That choice, more than anything else, is what gives you power over your circumstances. Born a Crime is a book that will make you laugh until you cry, and it will give you a profound appreciation for the invisible battles that people fight every day. It's a love letter to the power of a mother who refused to let the world define her son's limits. It reminds us that no matter the circumstances we are born into, we have the power to write our own story. That was a summary of Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood by Trevor Noah. We certainly covered the main highlights today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary, no matter how detailed, can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you make the journey yourself. The true magic of this book is in the quiet moments, when one of Trevor's stories or a single simple phrase from his mother hits you in a way you never saw coming. This podcast is here to help you decide if a book is worth your most valuable asset, your time. If anything we've explored today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely shift the way you see the world, your relationships, and the incredible power of resilience. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if this journey through Trevor Noah's story brought you any value, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to ensure you don't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the world's most fascinating minds. Thank you for joining me, and let's keep growing together.